So there's a couple different approaches that people handle Joomla sites with, and I want to cover the two basic approaches in this presentation. So, what is mobile Joomla? Is it the Joomla mobile that I put up on the website, or is it something different? So I think in order to answer that question, you need to ask yourselves additional questions. Should I have a separate mobile design, or is a responsive design sufficient? What about a fixed design? Is a fixed design an alternative for a mobile device? And how about mobile design and development tools and extensions for the Joomla designer developer? If you had the answers to all these questions, would that sort of, are there any other things you want to cover or you expected to get out of this? This, I want to be a little bit more interactive. I think we have enough time for that. So and I'm not the expert on this. I prepared a little bit for this past week. We did have another speaker that was the expert. So I'm not the know-all, be-all. So if you hear something that you have a question on or doesn't sound quite right, please, don't be shy. Don't be shy. So I want to start with a basic question. Is mobile important? Well, Google says mobile is important. They say that 79% of smartphone owners are smartphone shoppers. So a little bit of introduction. There's a couple slides here on what Google says. What they did is they went into shopping stores. They interviewed 1,500 shoppers, and they asked them some questions about their shopping experience. What brought them to the store? Did they look on their phone for the directions? Did they use their phone while they're in the store itself? So 62% of those said that they used a smartphone to assist in their shopping experience at least once a month, and 17 use the mobile platform to assist in shopping at least once a week. So Google thinks it's pretty important. Now you might say, okay, I don't do apps. Everyone does apps on the phone, on the mobile devices, but surprise, surprise, they said that they found out through this survey that 65% of the people that do this, of the 79% that use their mobile devices to enhance their shopping experience, they actually prefer going to the mobile website as opposed to using a mobile app. So I thought that was pretty enlightening. So this stuff is important to us. It's important even if you don't have an e-commerce site. So these are some of the things that shoppers do. 90% of smartphone shoppers use their phone for pre-shopping activities. Even if you don't have an e-commerce site, just have your business card out there so that it's in a mobile-friendly format to find directions and locations. 58% of that market uses the mobile device just to find a brick and mortar store or to find the hours for the brick and mortar store. So, don't think that it's just e-commerce. If you don't have a mobile-friendly site that just tells those two basic things, you're losing, 50+% of your potential audience. Well, this mobile thing, it's just a fad. It's not going to stay forever, right? Well, 2013, just like 2002, 2002 was a big market change in the phone. Anyone know what happened in 2002? More people used phones mobilely than used phones through the landline. Pretty amazing. Well, that same thing happened in 2013 with computers. 2013, if you look at each of these years, each year has two columns. The left-hand column represents the combination of your tethered devices, those things that are on your desktop or the notebook. They're not mobile. They're in your office or in your home at your desk. The right-hand column represents the smartphones and tablets. And so you can see in 2013 that smartphone and tablets have, it's shown as a forecast here, but it's just been in the last month confirmed that there are more smartphone and tablets. connecting to the internet than there are desktops and PCs. So this stuff is not going away, it's growing, and if you look at the growth for the next 2 years, everyone's forecasting phenomenal growth. So this stuff is important. Like I said, the internet usage for connected versus non-connected devices just flipped. The mobile website traffic across all industries is growing, and that chart didn't really spell it out, but it's growing at 3.5% a month, which is a pretty fast rate. 65% of shoppers who prefer, of people who do use mobile for their shopping experience to enhance it in any way, prefer websites. So this impacts us as an owner of a Joomla website. And there was one study that I didn't get into here. It was in the health industry, and the report said that less than 5% of the online healthcare websites are compatible with mobile. So there's a huge opportunity, at least in this one industry that they measured it, where they really need more mobile compatible websites. So what is mobile? If you ask different people, you have different perspectives. If you ask a designer, he'll say, well, it looks different on different devices. So, this is mobile, right? This is our website. It's a responsive website. I don't know if I'd call it a mobile website. So I want to at least introduce the concept of a difference between the two. The responsive website takes all the content and it makes it look pretty on a mobile device. And it responds or adapts to the viewport size that you can display the website on. The designer might say, well, this is a mobile website too. And yeah, it is, but I did this one for a business owner that wanted a small menu on their mobile device. I think they even pared it down. Right now it's directions and hours. So I have Google Maps, I have directions, I have their phone number. They had a special just for mobile folks. And that was basically, and then they have a featured product. And those were the 4 things that they wanted to show on their mobile website. So, this is another example of a mobile website. But the way these 2 websites are implemented completely differently, and I'll get into that. As a follow-on, if you ask the developer, what is a mobile website? Well, he'll think of it more in terms of when content is loaded. So from a no device detection, I used a viewport size to do things. That's basically what we know as a responsive design. You look at your viewport size, you use media queries to sense the viewport, you do different things, different style. You hide content, you move content around. You might use your HTML with a media statement to figure out what style sheet. So basically, you're looking at all of the content. You don't care what the device is, you care what the device viewport size is. The next thing is if you use device detection. And device detection means, okay, what is the device that is serving up these viewports? And there are scripts for that. And the way they work is you download either your home page or a sniffer, very short page, and it's a script, and it runs, and it says, hey, I'm looking at a iPhone version, 5 or whatever. It reports back to the server, or it serves up the content for that mobile device. Okay, but the downside of that is, so this is good in that you're detecting now a difference between all the content and CSS, moving it around, or some of the content and not actually having to worry about it, not loading it down, not taking all that bandwidth. So this isn't bad, but you send down an agent for you. So the first iteration, you might have a hiccup or a second or 2 delay where the script is running, sensing what you're running on, and then doing its thing. The best approach is to have that same device detection, but to have it in a script on the server. So when you do a web browser request response, you send up a request header. And in that header, it has all the information about your user agent, about your browser. The script, PHP script then, would just look at that user agent string and interrogate it, and then serve up the appropriate content. And Paul, you and I were talking a little bit about the same basic architecture to look at your IP addresses. So this, I believe, to be the best alternative as far as sensing the content serving the content based upon sensing the device that is asking for it. So as developers, we need to develop responsibly. Responsible, responsive development is what I call it. Most designers don't recognize the difference between those two. It's either a mobile website or it's not. They don't know CSS, they don't know about conditional content loading, but we do, and we need to be aware of it and do it correctly. Developers should use media queries responsibly. Don't use them in all cases, but use them at least with the knowledge that there is an alternative. Inform your clients of the advantages and disadvantages. Some of the advantages are that it's maybe less expensive to use CSS, or it's maybe more expensive. You have to determine that, but there are pros and cons of serving all the content or serving some of the content. For larger projects, basically meaning those that can afford it, consider a dedicated set of content versus layers of media queries. Any discussion on that? Okay. Now, the next thing I want to get into is there's a component called Mobile Joomla, and it's authored by Mobile Joomla. And so when Kendall asked me to do something on Mobile Joomla, I thought he meant a component, and I'm not sure if he did or not, but here it is.
A little bit of both.
You'll find Mobile Joomla in the Joomla extension directory. And if you look under mobile display is where you'll find it. There's a couple of them, but I believe it's the only one that's dedicated to serving up different content. And I think it's a great extension. I used it about a year ago, and that's when I first found out about it, and I was just thrilled that I was able to find it. It's used for serving up specific content to mobile devices, targeting each of them. Whatever they are, it can be targeted. Whether it's an iPhone, an Android, all the different variants of those devices, whether it's a BlackBerry device, a Nokia device, and all, not just some, all other phones. It comes with a component, a couple modules, a couple plugins, and a couple mobile templates. So I'm going to go over those next. So let's look at the component. When you go into the backend administrator, you'll see something that looks like this. And so up on top, you'll have 4 tabs. The first tab is the general tab, and I'm going to go through these in more detail. The smart phone tab. So what happens is each one of these tabs is used based upon the device that you have. And these folks categorize devices into 4 categories: the smartphone devices, iPhone devices, WAP devices, and iMobile devices. And in all honesty, these 2 I'm not that familiar with. One of them is a PDA type, and one of them is like a Nokia type of device. So they're basically dumb smartphones, if that makes sense. And then the last tab is the advanced settings. So let's start and look through some of these. If you look at the general setting, you have a place for the title, the image quality, and they will at your option, rescale the image. So it does dynamic image rescaling based upon the device size, or the device type, I should say, that it's serving the image to. And you can designate here the home page for your devices. And since this is in the general tab, all these designations here can be overridden for each of the devices specifically, or you can just say, just take the global, and the global would come from this page right here. Let's see here, what did I do? So that's the general. It's just those few settings. The next one is the smartphone, and the smartphone has, since it's a smartphone, has all of the advanced settings and all the template options. So I'm going to spend some time on this tab, and all the others are just subsets of what you see on this page for that specific device. So the first thing I want to point out is each phone, so the component recognizes the device, it goes to this tab and it says, what should I do with this device? And the first thing you can do is designate what template you want to use for that device. And that's where you designate it. The second thing you would do is you would say, what module positions do I want to use within this template? And Mobile Joomla gives you 4 templates and 9, I don't want to call them module positions, I want to call them module slots. And so if you look here on the left, I'm going to get into more detail. There are 9 slots that you could put something into, and what you put in to the slot is not a module, but a module position. And then in the modules, you assign modules to module positions. And so for each of these 9 mobile slots, you can have many modules assigned to them. I hope that's clear. I'm going to go over it probably one more time. So some of the things that you can override or designate on this, again, is the template that you're going to use. I chose to use the mobile iPhone template for all of my devices, even the smartphone, and it works just fine. That way I had to customize it, only one of the templates. So the first thing to ask you is the home page. Again, I'm going to refer back to the general tab, which is, I put the same information as I had on general tab is automatically filled in here. I can override it if I want to. Display content component on the home page, yay or nay, or use global. The images, they do rescale. You can force the margins if you want. You can force a style. Some third-party components mess things up for you, so you can actually have a style attribute inserted here with information. In the advanced there, you can do gzip compression. You can remove some unsupported tags for the device, like if you don't have an embed or an object or even a script tag that's serviced by those devices. Mobile Joomla will automatically remove them for you. You can convert entities into symbols if you want, yay or nay, and then you can serve up different content types. Now, content types is something I've just recently become familiar with, and I've always used text HTML in my doc type. I probably will rethink that when I go to do this again, just because I have a validator that doesn't validate because of this one thing for no other reason. So there's probably a better content type than text HTML for mobile devices. As far as the template modules, okay, these are those 9 spots that you can, or slots that you can put modules in. And the way you put things into each of the 9 slots is you name a module position here. So for each one of these drop downs, it shows you all of the modules that you have published to a module position. So it shows you the module positions. So a better way of saying it is all the active module positions. And so you can pick from them. And Mobile Joomla gives you a couple modules, and automatically these module positions will show up there along with your own module positions. So you have 9 slots. The component is like right here, so it's right before the mid. Template options, to use standard Joomla. To be honest, I can't explain that one. extended editors, if you want to use extended editors on your mobile device, whether you want to embed a CSS file for this template or have it just called in, like with the link statement, whether you want your XML heading on or off, the doc type heading, and xmins and HTML head. Again, in all honesty, I'm not up to date on the pros and cons of each of these. If you Google them, you'll get all the information. The embed CSS is an easy one. It just puts your CSS directly, in your head statement, as opposed to doing another call to be a link statement. So I would recommend probably doing that the next time I do it. And the other stuff I really am not knowledgeable enough to really comment on.
The use head is going to be whether you include the standard Joomla header, which throws a lot of extra junk into it potentially. So it's possible, it's where all the includes come from for like the system template,
Mood tools,
and all that stuff.
Okay.
The extended editors is going to be like, do you want to be able to include probably like JCE or something like that?
Yeah, right.
Do you want to allow that? And so that's kind of what that one would be.
Okay. Yep. I forgot about the header thing. Thanks. All right. So iPhone is basically that same thing, only a subset of the options here on the bottom. You don't see as many advanced options. And again, for iPhones, I'm using the mobile iPhone, just like I did for my smartphone. So I'm using it for all of them. For the wireless access point devices, I use mobile iPhone, and for the iMode devices, I use iPhone. So I have one template I use for all. Probably if I had a real device or a real set of customers that needed something to be served up to these older model phones, I'd probably not be able to get away with this. But in my case, this customer was happy with just iPhones and smartphones, and didn't have the budget to really, or nor care to have any other phones work. So it was sort of an easy job for me.
I think the WAP phones are going to be like where you can use a regular cell phone to get on the internet.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to be the WAP usually. So you've got you can get to the internet, but it's not a real rich experience.
Mm-hmm.
It's more text-based.
Text-based, yeah.
Were tablets on that list too?
Tablets were not on that list. That's a very good question. This is the freebie version. So you can get all this for free. You do have an advertisement, which you get to pay $29 to take off. So it's you can test it, see if you like it, pay $29, and you're good to go. The other versions, they're called the Pro version. I think it's $129 on sale now for $99. They do have professional templates, so more than the 4 that are released with the free version, and they also have the specific tablet. So where are we here? So for the advanced settings, you just have a couple of performance, server caching, yay or nay, device caching, yay or nay, gzip compression, yay or nay. You can force your image width or force the style for the image. And this is different than the other one. It has more to do with third-party extensions and not working with the images. So if you have trouble with third-party extensions, read up on documentation and play with this on or off. That may help you. And any unsupported tags, whether you want them removed or not. URL direction. When you have, there's a module that gives you, at the bottom of your desktop site, you can say go to mobile if you wanted to. Not sure you want to do that, but on the bottom of your mobile homepage or website, you might want to say view full site. A lot of people recommend that. A lot of people recommend against it because it lets the user know that he's missing something by looking at the mobile. So there's pros and cons, but if you want that, This is where the full site goes to from a mobile device, the URL up there.
If you're doing device detection, can you also detect landscape or portrait for the device?
Via viewport?
Well, that's where
Not
you would.
using this center.
No, this basically is device detection, and you
I mean,
can.
it's like a big smartphone. You could want a layout that's different than a wide.
The templates that they have work with all, orientations of the 4 devices,
Right.
well, really 2 devices.
But is it more like the content stretches to fit and kind of use the same thing? But it's just
Are the
stretched
templates
out?
that give you responsive?
Yeah.
Yes. Redirection here, I believe, is where you would want your mobile devices to go. So basically, unless if you have a mobile-only site, you want to keep this blank so that you can go to switch back and forth between the 2. The subdomains, or if you have a specific subdomain, which a lot of people, larger companies do, you'll see m.amazon.com or things like that. You can have a separate subdomain for each of your devices, and that's where you'd enter it there. So that's the component. Any questions about the component? Modules, there are 3 modules that come with it. The first one is that I mentioned is the desktop user, and that allows you to switch between a mobile and a desktop. And that's where I said you might, on your PC version, have, if you came from the mobile device, you should probably do want to put the mobile version so you can get back there. And in a mobile version, you might say, view full site. So this is a module that gives you that intelligence. The menu module is the mobile menu module that displays the mobile menu. Well, it displays any menu, but you should set up your own separate menu I called mine mobile. So the way you do that, as we all know, you create a menu in the menu manager, call it something like mobile. You add your mobile menu items to it, as opposed to the main menu, and then you configure this module to display that menu, that mobile menu set of items, using one of the 9 module positions, module slots.
Just creating menu item aliases, creating menu items as aliases to like master main menu or something like that.
Could do it that way, yeah. Yeah, for my implementation, it's pretty simple. I just created separate ones. So it's nice and simple. And then they threw in this third one. It's sort of like a module slot above the top, and I called it header. It just had some, like 2 fields that you can put in there, so I didn't even use it. I put all everything in the top module slot using a custom module, custom HTML module. I think I mentioned this before. They give you 9 module slots. The first 3 are called top, and then your component, and then the mid, and then the bottom footer ones. And again, that's all done in this section here, where you match up your module slots with the positions that you want things to appear in. The templates they give you for the standard version, there's 4 of them, one for iMode, one for iPhone, one for smartphone, one for WAP. So I customized and worked only with the single iPhone template. In mobile Joomla, in the component, I selected the iPhone template for all 4 of those. I showed you that. And then in the template manager, I assigned the iPhone template to the mobile menu items. So in the template manager, so this is template manager. This is the iPhone template, and so I had it as a hidden thing, and I just used it to start going whenever I found that I was on a mobile device. As far as plugins, you can serve up pieces of mobile content or desktop content within a given article if you find that useful. I can't really think of a reason that I would use it. And then you can also distinguish pieces of content by actual device. If you want to test, there's several ways you can test. You can easily put in a query string. So if I wanted to test my smartphone, I would put in $device equals XHTML, and so on and so forth. And I did find a list of devices, WAP devices, if you're curious to know what they are. Most of them, I believe, were Nokias. As far as the installation process, it's pretty straightforward. The only thing you should watch out for is there's an option to install Sencha. Sencha Mobile is a company that's behind, you may have heard of it, the Warful database. It's an open source project that has every wireless device in it and all of its characteristics. It's large. It's the de facto standard for device description repositories. And so if you want to know what a device is and what it does, you go there. It's good, but it's probably too large. It's, at least for my needs, I didn't need to know, what device. I just needed to know generally, maybe a couple tens of devices as opposed to thousands of devices. If you chose it, you would be using 25 megabytes of your SQL database space. So it is quite large. As an alternative, what I used was this thing called AMDD. It's the name that Mobile Joomla gives to their standard set of devices. And in their database, it has, a lot of devices, and it has much smaller size, only 3 megabytes as opposed to 25 megabytes. User agent strings, I mentioned these. If you haven't done any mobile work, you probably aren't familiar with it, so I'm going to spend 2 minutes just describing what some of them look like. These are what they look like in all of their ugliness. So I took snapshots of the first two up there are the user agent strings using my Chrome browser. And all of the strings that I am aware of, they first start off with Mozilla 5. That's, I think, basically a past standard. So it doesn't tell you much. The next thing it tells you in these strings are the platform that you're running on. So this device here is a Windows NT device. It's a 64-bit processor. For the MacBook Pro that I have, it was Intel Macintosh OS X processor. The next thing they show you is the engine that the device uses. So if it's Safari or Chrome, they're using the WebKit engine. If it's Firefox, you're using the Geico engine. And then the pièce de résistance is really what you want, to find out is what browser am I using, and that comes last. So it's either Chrome 28, Firefox 22, or Safari version 6 with 536.25 build of that specific version. If you look at the same thing using an Android or a Galaxy S3, which is what I have, you'll see that it runs on a Linux operating system. Linux, it's an Android device. So the iPhone identifies itself as a iPhone on a iPhone device. Apple WebKit, and again, the thing you really want to know is the browser that you're using. And the Android calls their browser version 4 the mobile Safari, and iPhone calls theirs mobile Safari version 6. As far as the tools that you might want to use for mobile, two Firefox add-ons, live headers, and user agent switcher. I find both of those invaluable. The headers I use even for SEO and for other things, like to see if I'm actually issuing a 301 redirect or is it a 302 or yada, yada, yada. The user agent switcher, I'll show you a little bit how that works. You can switch your user agent when you're testing your mobile template. So you can pretend from your desktop that it's actually an iPhone 5 or a Galaxy S2 or Galaxy S3. And if you don't know what your user agent looks like, you can define your own and put it into user agent switcher. And these guys, Mobile Joomla, have written a script. So if you go to mobilejoomla.com, ua.php, it'll just show you a string that gives you back your user agent. And there's a whole lot of tools that Google has for webmasters for the mobile environment. So that switcher that I like so much, I had it here as I was acting as, so this is my desktop, and this is what comes up when I use a Samsung Galaxy S3. And so I created my own device and I put it in there. But you can download all of these other devices. I think when you initially install it, it comes with a few of them. The first thing you want to do is go to Edit User Agents and click on the link that says Download Full List. And then you have all of this populated with, and you can go in, based upon a browser, based upon the mobile device. You can use this, for SEO work. To see what Google looks like or some of the other bots look like. So it's a pretty handy little tool. So in summary, responsive is not mobile in my mind. Mobile, in my mind, is serving up different content for different devices. Thank you, sir. Mobile web browsing is increasing at 3.5% a month, so pay attention. It's going to hit you pretty fast if it hasn't already. Some industries have low-hanging fruit. If you're in that industry, you're going to be busy. Mobile Joomla, I think, is a superior Joomla component. I have not had any issues with it, and support was more than adequate. But there's nothing like testing on a real device, especially when you're trying to tune the exact pixel size of a button or something like that. So did I answer your questions about what is mobile Joomla or a Joomla mobile? Let's go through these. Should I have a separate mobile design or is a responsive design sufficient? Depends, right. So this is the average, the consultants, it depends, right. So it really does depend. So I think at least now maybe you have a little bit of more knowledge or, to make an informed decision. Fixed design, yeah, they'll work. There's nothing wrong with it. You may have to, zoom and so on and so forth, but, it usually works. Is a fixed design an alternative for a mobile device? If you have no budget, it'll have to be, right? But I think, the key is just realizing how important a mobile image is and how important it's going to be in the next 2 years and forward. And then the design tools and developer tools I went through. That's it. Any other questions? Yes.
I wanted to ask about the templates this uses. So did these install standard Joomla templates, and then you assign them to the menu items that correspond to the mobile Joomla? So
yes.
They provide you some installable templates.
The free version, you get 4 installable templates. Yep. They're installed for you when you install the entire package. You get components, templates, plugins, modules.
Can you do your own?
You could, sure. You would just, basically put I'm trying to think where you would hook it up. Yeah, you would do it in your template manager. You would hook it, that's where you would start it from, and then the devices would take over the module positions from there, the component device slots. Robin?
Yeah, I guess I was thinking that too about doing your own, like, I noticed like the menu, they've designed the buttons, there's some more buttons that are, I guess one question is, when you press on those buttons, do you get like some a new layer of buttons underneath it, or how does that menu work?
That's the way their template came.
Yeah.
Yeah, so yes.
And then if you wanted to design your own buttons and graphics, can you do that?
You can do that, yeah. So what I did is I took theirs and modified it. They do have some fancier ones where rather than, they have different options for menus. So rather than having the drop downs like you just mentioned, you'll have where you see up on top, it's a little like bar of, a little block of bars. And you push that, then you'll get your menus there. And those are with the Pro Pack.
Now that phenomenon, and the way that seems to be the most common and best way to do that is that what drops down is actually a drop-down list. It's actually a format. Right? So the mobile device takes care of rendering it at the appropriate size for that mobile device, rather than like a CSS-styled drop-down menu. It's a little div tag that drops the device or something like that. That's one thing that it seems like is a hallmark of better mobile design, is putting the main menu in a form element or drop-down form list, and just let the looks very plain, but the buttons, the things that you punch on are always consistently rendered and properly rendered, big enough to for the device and handle scrolling.
I haven't seen menus implemented in a form. In a form.
I guess I'm speaking more of it as a generic form element. So it's like a drop-down.
It's kind of how Bootstrap handles it.
Yeah.
It kind of converts it into sort of the click list, where it opens up into, in some cases it renders it as an actual scrolling element, and other ones it renders it as a thing that pops up.
But it's in a form.
It's
a generic form element, so
it's not necessarily in a form.
Okay, and what's that by you?
What's that?
What's the advantage of putting your menu inside of a generic form element?
Well, it just seems like then the device will display it properly according to how that device generically displays form elements.
Okay.
So that it's more likely to be properly displayed versus if you have a specifically styled or classic, drop-down menu.
A list item.
List item, where it could be too small per device, or I don't know. It just seems like that's become a real standard way. Especially when there's that one little main menu button in the mobile display. It seems like it's just firing off
Okay.
a format.
Yeah.
All right, I'll try to get you set up here.
Okay. Yeah, so at this point I'm going to take over and sort of talk about, I've got a couple of sites that I've actually done or that we're working on. And they have different methodologies of how we actually kind of manage this. One of the ones we've been using lately has been tied in with Rocket Theme. Most of the clubs, the frameworks, when they're working with them, most of the frameworks have come. He's got it on. Can you turn the mic off?
He continues to get it. Okay, so. All right, so with a lot of the template clubs, the frameworks have gotten to the point where when they went up to the next versions of the framework, when they came out with 2.5 and now the 3.0 stuff, their framework versions have switched, and most of them are actually now doing responsive. Built in directly to the template. It does a fairly good job with a lot of these templates. It works decently well. It's not something you have to necessarily tweak too much, but you definitely want to look at it and see kind of what it works with. Gantry is Rocket Themes. Gantry 4 is totally responsive. On their site, what you can do, as of January 2012, if you can find it, they have a template compatibility. They show you, first off, what versions is it available in. All their new stuff is 2.5 and 3.1 only. You can get way back down and still find some that are in 1.5 if you need it. In a lot of cases, these mean basically responsive versions. Most of their responsive stuff is only 2.5 and 3x. They also have this one, which is a fixed non-responsive, which means it's going to be a fixed width template. It will not resize on a mobile device. So you're going to get that zooming and scrolling and squinching and whatever you got to do to see the whole site. When you see, like on Rocket Theme, when you see this means it is responsive. So you can see that they've gone back and through Halcyon, which is January 2012, they have made all their templates since January 2012 responsive. So if you were using something from that point, then you actually have responsiveness built in if you have updated to the latest version of Gantry and the latest version of the template. It's now been rewritten so that it's actually a responsive situation. For a lot of people, this is how they're going to manage mobile. This is how they're going to do the mobile. And from an SEO perspective and from a content provider perspective, they're going to tell you it's what you should do, because you really don't want to be delivering two different sets of content from your website. You want to have everything delivering the same content. First off, it makes it easier on you because you edit one place, now your content's updated. One of the clients I'm going to talk to you about, they have 4 different sites that we have to manage. So every time a new location comes into place, we have to add it to 4 different websites. Had we started this from the beginning, we would have done it with all the content being delivered in one way and probably doing some kind of device detection to deliver a different set of formats, because really the content is the same, the format changes. So we would have turned off some modules and turned on some modules depending on which device was there. But because the main site was already in place and this microsite that we had built was already in place, we ultimately couldn't go back and redo the site because it would have been such a big cost that they really weren't looking to be able to do that. They also wanted to kind of dumb down the experience on the mobile side. And I'll show you that in a minute. But we basically, for that particular site, it's a custom template. But for a lot of our sites that we're doing for clients on a budget, we're using club templates. So like we're doing some sites for some roller skating rinks. They want it to be looking decent on their mobile devices. So we're using basically Rocket Theme templates to be able to go through and physically allow for the stuff to work on a mobile device. And we'll work with it to say, okay, well, in this circumstance, we'll turn this off, we'll leave it on. But it ultimately does sort of a nice way of collapsing. Kind of puts all your main content at the top, and then your sidebars kind of come up down at the bottom. So it does have a nice way of collapsing the data to where you get the content at the top, which is what you want. Utheme does the same thing. Their Warp, I think they're on 6 now, maybe. But their framework is also now responsive. If I remember correctly, the T3 framework is either already or it is in process of being upgraded to be totally responsive. All the rest of them are doing it. So if they aren't responsive already, they're way behind. Most of these guys had this stuff out. As you can see, Rocket Theme has gone all the way back to January 2012. Well, they didn't start in January 2012. They were about mid-year last year is when they started releasing responsive templates, maybe towards the end of the year, and they went backwards and started producing responsive designs for their new stuff, for their older stuff. And they're also going back and converting a lot of their old stuff to work with Joomla 2.5 and 3x. So they're going back and doing that. Utheme kind of did the same thing. But they're all sort of doing that already. So if you're looking for a simple, cost-effective way to have your site look decent, I'm not saying great, you will have to do some work on it to make it look great, but to have it look decent, look for a standard custom template or a standard pre-built template from one of these clubs, and you'll get some of that responsive built in for you. It's not going to be something where you're going to be doing a totally different design for your mobile site. It's going to look like your regular site. And there's things you have to keep in mind, like images. You need to make sure that basically the sizing of your images is done for pretty much your desktop. And what happens is if you've got that desktop size, it'll resize itself if you take the image sizing off when you insert an image. If you turn those two things off, it will automatically resize. And in some cases, even if you don't turn it off and take out the width and the height, it'll still do it anyway. There's something I think they've got in JavaScript that kind of makes it resize. There's downsides to all that. There's upsides and downsides. Upside is you deal with one set of content, one set of data, one set of everything. The downside is you're dealing with one set of content, one set of data, one set of everything. You're still loading that huge picture to put on a little mobile device. There are some ways around that, but it can start getting really tricky. That's where doing a responsive design takes a lot of planning, a lot of look, and a lot of effort to really get it right. To have everything delivered within one package takes a lot of planning. And it really starts when you start planning your site. If you're going to redo your site and you're looking at going from 1.5 to 2.5 right now, or 2.5 to 3.0, that's the point you might want to consider if you're going to look at responsive. No, yeah.
I see up on the screen there, it says based on the warp theme framework. Is Gantry based on a different?
No, Gantry is homegrown Rocket theme.
Okay.
Warp is homegrown U theme.
Do any of these template providers, is anybody leveraging Bootstrap?
Yes. Bootstrap from England. Phil,
Sure, yeah.
God, I forgot his last name now. Phil's his first name, and I can't remember his last name. He actually put together Bootstrap, which is Joomla templates based on Bootstrap. So it gives you the Bootstrap flexibility, which I was going to talk about next, but it gives you some of that Bootstrap capability to be able to say, I don't want this to show up on a certain device. There's some built-in pieces to Bootstrap that allow you to say, is it hidden on desktop? Is it visible on desktop? Is it hidden on mobile? Is it hidden on whatever?
Utility classes.
Yeah, you get your utility classes, which allow you to utilize some of that and physically put it as a module class suffix. You plug in a module, you tell it hidden desktop. You're not going to see it on the desktop, but you will on your mobile. And it does differentiate between, believe, tablets and mobile. So it has and if I can find it, this is always the hard part, is actually finding the actual documentation. It's one thing I've got to talk to him about on his site. He doesn't quite have everything quite right. Yeah. I always have a hard time finding it. But the idea is it's a 12-column grid system, so you can actually tell it that you want a module to take up, span 6 of those columns. You want another one to span 2 and another one to span 4. And it gives you 12 spaces. That's built into the template. And it's still, when you shrink, it does still kind of give you that. The Bootstrap he's built on does end up working with mobile setup in that way. So it does go down to that as well. There's a fluid grid, there's a default grid, there are layouts, there's also ties in with media queries. I was looking for some of those base CSS things, but unfortunately he's not making it easy to find. But this is kind of what it deals with. You've got effectively the column widths and the layout widths for the different supported devices, some viewport pieces, the media queries you can work with. This is what I was kind of looking at. There are classes you can tack on to certain things. Even if it's not a module, you can put it on a table. If you don't want a table to show up on the desktop, you want it to show up on the phone, you could tag it with a class of visible tablet or visible phone, and it'll only show up on those devices. Now, I don't know for certain if it actually, because of the way it's rendering it, my guess is the data is loading. What happens is when it finds that class, it says display none or display visible or whatever. So it's turning it on and off based on CSS. So you're still loading the content. So you're not getting away from that. So if you have 2 tables of images, one that's 4 wide when you're on the desktop and one that's 2 wide when you're on the phone, which we've done for a client, we did it that way, it still loads the data. It's still there, everything still loads. So you've got to keep that in mind when you go to use stuff like this. What I've done for another client was related to what Dennis was talking about, the difference between a mobile site and a desktop site. They had the big desktop site, which we'll take a look at. They had this really large, really involved website that had a lot of stuff on it already. What they wanted for the mobile site was to cut it down dramatically, really shove it into a small setup and give people only what they really needed on their phone. Where do I find you? How do I contact you? What's the schedule? That's what they have found that most people are after when they're coming in on the phone. That's the minimal stuff they really are after. So this site doesn't look too bad on the phone. It isn't responsive, so you kind of have to twist and do all the zooming and everything, but it's still usable. In theory, you could do it. If I came in on a mobile device, we would see it, but what we chose to do, because they wanted to have basically different content, we looked at using mobile Joomla and decided that because of the setup of the main site with how complicated it already was, we didn't want to complicate it further. Because we had a lot of categories and stuff already duplicated, we had a lot of content already duplicated because they have a microsite inside the big site and another one over here, and it was like 4 sites inside one already. We didn't want to add another one. So we went to the mobile. This is what they wanted to do. This is what they came up with, and when we actually get it, basically resized, this is kind of what you see on the phone. When you come in on the phone, it's got these nice big buttons. You can find it pretty easily. Granted, some of the buttons are, not necessarily the easiest to read with the yellow one, but hey, it's there. It's doable. People can click on these things. They actually work. So what they wanted is request info. It's a form. Allows people to put in their information, get what they need. We could really redo this, and they are actually working on it. The other big one was locations. That's what most people want to know about. Where are you guys at? The way we're actually doing this one is what Dennis had talked about originally, and this was a recent addition that we're still kind of fixing. But these are the locations. They wanted people, they got feedback. Well, those links are too small because they were regular text links. And when you're looking at it on the phone, it was kind of hard to hit it right. So they wanted to have a bigger button so you could click on it. These were about the right size. We tested it a little bit with a few people, and they're like, okay, that works much better. So now we're going through and kind of tweaking a little bit of different things and getting them fixed. They're adding some new locations and kind of renaming stuff. So we've got to go back and tweak a few of these, but they're happy with this. They wanted this because they wanted people to find it, get to it very quickly, get the information, and be done and gone. They didn't really care to give them a lot of information. We're actually taking off this content at the top. So they literally want you to go straight to where the information you really want, which is ultimately changing yet again, but it's ultimately, where am I going to find this Arlington Heights Center to get my kid in to learn about language, to learn a foreign language. So here's the information they wanted. We had to go back, and we originally had this as a Google map, but when you're on the phone and you start scrolling past the map, and the map is 2/3 of the screen, you're scrolling on the map now, not on the phone. So we had to go back and do images of everything and put it in as an image. If they want to go to Google Maps, you click on it and it takes you over to the Google Maps application or to the mobile site for Google Maps. So this is one of those situations where the client wanted to deliver approximately the same information, but it's different. Because when you come down here and you start looking at the schedules, this is a totally different format than the main website's schedule. So this one we had to shrink because it's on the phone. We didn't have a choice. We wanted to show the information, but when you look at it on the main site, you see that it goes way across the screen. When you actually open that up, you get a full 7 days. We couldn't do that on the phone. So we had to shrink it and make it work a little bit easier for the mobile side. You know, and
Is that static or is that something that?
this is static. Well, this is actually dynamic.
But the mobile version.
The mobile is dynamic as well. We're actually using a PHP product called Jumi, J-U-M-I, that does a call to a database that's located off-site that grabs what center I'm calling from, what I'm looking for, and it basically sends it over there and says, give me the layout, and it sends the HTML back, and then we show it on the screen. And it generates all these drop-downs and everything. So they can enter all their location information, all their class schedules and everything into their center system, and then we can pull it from the website. So it's something that somebody else, they had already developed. They wanted to continue using it. They weren't ready to try to convert that whole system into PHP and put it on the Joomla server. So they wanted to leave it where it was and just pull the data. So those were the two kind of case studies of some of the stuff Dennis went over, of how different people look at different things. You know, some people want to look at going totally one whole mobile site. I only want a mobile site that is totally different than my main site, because people want specific things. They want to find very specific things. I want to look at a location. You know, I want to have these big buttons right when I come up. You know, where am I going? I want to learn about locations. Okay, great, right there. Here we go, I'm off and running. They didn't want to have them reading a bunch of stuff on the phone, because what are you usually doing on your phone when you're looking up a business? Where's the phone number? Right at the top. Where's the location of where I'm going? Well, there's your second button. I want to get more information. I'm sitting here waiting for my kid to finish playing soccer. Okay, I'll fill out the form and send it off. You know, if I want to read some stuff, I can go to the programs or languages and find out about that stuff. So they wanted to kind of minimize the difference between the mobile and the regular, because most of this stuff doesn't exist on the mobile site. I mean, it's there, but if it's there, it's hard to find, because they kind of hid it, because that's not what most people were looking for.
So how do you, if they go to this domain using a mobile site, how do you direct them to mobile sites?
Nice lead in. The way that this one actually works is I found a product that's an open source project. It's a PHP based. You load it at the top of your index.php. When Joomla loads, it does device detection. It's based on a query string, so you periodically need to update the files to get new devices. But it's all kind of file based. It's not really database based, which might be faster, might be slower. But the idea is it's doing what you said, using PHP detection as opposed to using JavaScript detection. So it's doing it as it's loading Joomla, processing the template. It's saying, oh wait, I've got a switch and I'm going over here. So we redirect them to the mobile site. It actually writes a cookie onto the system and says, okay, I'm on the mobile site. So when they come back again, it'll go to the mobile site, because at the bottom of the mobile site, they can click on View Full Site. And then it'll send them over to the full site. And if that cookie, actually it's the backwards. If the cookie exists, it says, okay, show me the full site. But when the cookie doesn't exist, send me to the mobile. So it checks for that cookie to see if it exists. The cookie expires, I think, after a day or 2 days or something like that. So if they come back in tomorrow, it's probably going to send them back to the mobile site. So ultimately, they can switch back and forth if they wish. And at the bottom of the main site, I think there's a view mobile site that they can get back if they are doing that.
Does it know the corresponding page in the mobile version, or is it just taking the home page?
Actually, this is a totally different Joomla site. So it's actually, unlike mobile Joomla, which uses a set of articles and content and stuff within your main site, this particular methodology we built a mobile site within a different subdomain. That's what we ended up deciding on, because we just couldn't risk screwing up the main site, because it's their source of business. We couldn't risk messing it up and having it down at all to be able to put the mobile in place. So we chose to go with a completely different mobile Joomla site, which again, you have to look at the issues around doing that. Now we have to keep up 3 different sites with the different Joomla versions and keep them all upgraded. Whereas if we were doing it with one site like Mobile Joomla, you're doing it once and you're upgrading everything, but you're adding that complexity to that one site. Now you've got to deal with 2 sites within one versus 2 separate ones. So sometimes it's it's a trade-off, and you've got to look at, do you have the people to maintain the sites? Maybe you do multiple sites. Do you not have the people, or is it going to be easier to do one site? Then you look at like Mobile Joomla or something like that. One of the other pieces which has kind of gone away but is still available and still out there, there's a product called Weaver Apps that does kind of a false application, is not exactly a good way to put it. It's not really an app for your smartphone, but it is. It actually builds kind of a wrapper that takes you to your website. It kind of does like Mobile Joomla, but it makes it kind of look like an app when you go to your website. So it's kind of a Mobile Joomla type device that plugs in, you build it on their site, so it's actually residing elsewhere, and you put pointers to content on your site that it loads within these pages that you define. So it's a different methodology from having a mobile site within your site or having sort of this app-like device, which I think you can then have it, save it to your home screen, and you can put it on the home screen and kind of pull up your site that way. So it's almost an app, but not really. It's not the whole problem of having to develop an app, get it approved by Apple or Android or any of that stuff, and it's sort of a little easier because you don't have to get any of that approval, but it kind of works like an app, but it's still using your core content. So you have all that content available, and you work with it at Weaver Apps through their website. You build this thing over there, and it kind of gets called from your site to them. And so if they actually go away, then your mobile site kind of goes away. So that's the other thing you have to look at. With all these kind of deals, make sure you look at a product that is trustworthy. Rocket Theme, UTheme, Joomla Bamboo, a lot of these guys, they're going to be around for quite a while. They may morph and change, like Rocket Theme and UTheme both have gone into building templates for WordPress and some other stuff. So they keep morphing their business model, but they're sticking around. They're going to be around for a while. The nice thing about it is you can still support what's there, even if they go away. You can still use it because it's all on your server. You don't have to worry about it. You won't get any updates, but it's all on your server. Other things like Weaver Apps and those kind of things, you've got to look at what happens if that company goes out of business. Or like with Mobile Joomla, what happens if when 4.x comes out, they've gone out of business? Well, how do you deal with a mobile site? Because there's not going to be an update to work with Joomla 4, if that happens. Not likely, because they're a big developer. They're fairly well known in the community, so they've got some oomph behind them of people saying, yeah, this is not a bad product, you can use it. It's kind of trustworthy. And then with any Joomla extension, you want to make sure you're using that. Whether it's for mobile or anything else, you kind of want to know that. Yeah, somebody's wanting to add you on Skype. I didn't realize your Skype was turned on. So anybody have any questions about how these were sort of implemented?
So how much is this extra mobile site going to cost me? Do you guys handle pricing approaches? Because it seems like one of the deals with responsive design is, you ideally kill 2 birds with one stone.
Even with responsive, it puts it up. It does put the price up. You could probably add 20% to really do a responsive design properly, and to do all the planning.
Yeah, you're breaking down to like functional areas, or okay, you're going to need 5 extra mobile-only things.
Yeah, when we're looking at the mobile, in this case, what we did, we looked at what content did they want on the site, what were they really trying to get at, what kind of stuff did they need, what was the layout going to be. So we looked at it as a project. We looked at it as basically, this is a totally brand new Joomla site that we're building. With the stuff like Mobile Joomla, you're going to have a different set of requirements that you need to talk through the client with to find out what they really want on this mobile site, like Dennis did with the Home and Garden Center. You need to look at that and say, okay, we really only want this on there. So you've got to really sit down and talk to them about what is going to be on the mobile site And it's basically another requirements gathering that if you're doing it as a full-blown project, not an add-on, you're going to add it in when you do it. But you're probably looking at, I mean, for most mobile setups, you're going to probably look at 20 to 30, maybe 40% more to do the mobile side of things. Because in a lot of cases, there's a lot of stuff you have to do. There's a lot of pieces that you have to add into it. Sometimes 50% because you're building another whole site. Whether you're doing it within a site or not, reusing content or not, you're still basically looking at it from a totally different perspective.
How do you, I suppose it depends on the client. I mean, you know, the big clients are going to understand the cost
Yeah.
and approach it with that. But, you know, any smaller clients who are like, oh, it's what the hell? Trying to get my money out of Kendall.
Well, the way that we've handled a few people that wanted it to work on a mobile phone, they weren't so upset that it didn't look the best, and they didn't want to spend the money to make it look better. We went with a pre-built template with responsive because that's the budget they had. That was the cheapest possibility, and we built in maybe an extra 5 or 10% on the cost to be able to go through and tweak some of that stuff that looked really bad. Because we loaded the template, looked at it from the demo site on Rocket Theme, went in and did it and said, okay, what's it going to look like? So they loaded it on their phone and they said, ooh, crap, that's going to look pretty bad. So they were like, well, you know, can we do something about this? So when we were talking about it in the beginning, that's kind of what we did. We went through and said, okay, let's look at it from the beginning. Let's just add this to it and see what we can get from it. So, I mean, and one of the things that's nice about the responsive nature with a lot of these templates is you can test it. Like Dennis said, with the nice thing about the Firefox thing is it's acting like that thing. It's really acting like that device. But when I look at the Language Star site on my phone, I do get a different experience in relation to sizing. Pixelation is different. So when I look at it on here and I approximate it on my screen, it's not exactly the same. If I base it on content that's on the page and I say, well, this is about right, when I look at it on the phone, it may jump down one line. That's the problem I have to fix right now, is that the bottom menu is a little bit too wide for the phone. So the Contact Us falls down one line. So I have to kind of work on that. But with some of these, you can just grab the screen and start doing this. You know, and it shows you an approximation of what the site will look like and how it's going to react.
Well, Firefox also has a responsive design in it, and so this is Google.
Yeah, this is Chrome.
But in Firefox, you can actually pick sizes, you have it.
Oh yeah, you can change the, yeah. You can make it do a viewport better.
So it usually gets pretty close on the width.
Yeah.
Then you have your Chrome up on top, which is different than a Chrome you have on your phone.
Correct.
So
Yeah, so don't assume, and this is and you can see here how it does the different setup with, you know, when I get out here, it's going to throw that back out here. You know, this kind of goes away when you get down to the phone size. It kind of goes away and goes below or something like that. So you get all that, you get those differences, but you can show this to a client and say, take a look at these, resize your browser, see what it does. Granted, you're not going to have this much content on your site ever because this is a demo. They load it with everything. But you can get a general idea of what it might do. And you can see how is it going to work on the mobile. If you can live with that, then we don't have to do very much. We don't have to do a lot at all. But if you really want it to have a different experience when they go to the mobile phone, that's where you get into basically doing an add-on piece that may be phase 2. Maybe they can live with this for 6 months while they build up some money to pay for the mobile redesign. Maybe at the end of 6 months, they're like, well, this has worked perfectly. Everybody says it's great. It works fine. We don't need to do anything. But then they may come back and say, nobody can find anything on our mobile site. We really need to do something.
How about mobile, strategy? You're getting paid for providing the strategic knowledge about what that company should do. It seems like, especially with Joomla, you're going to get a lot of even the small-sized customers who would say, yeah, I want it on mobile, I want it on my phone, but they, like Pascasi, it sounds like they knew, they came with the strategy, right?
They knew what they wanted.
Yeah, but there'll be a lot of customers who won't know anything other than, oh, mobile, and Are you guys charging for a strategic consultation as well?
It's more like a,
Kind of eating it?
it's more like a separate set of requirements, and so if they want mobile, that discovery phase might be a little bit
Okay, so you
more.
just, gotcha, got it out.
Yeah. And like with this one, it was an add-on after the fact. They said, let's do this site, that site, now let's do mobile. You know, we knew it was coming, but it was like, we've got other priorities first. We have to get the site upgraded so it's actually usable, and we want to get it redesigned. We got to do that first, then we'll talk about mobile.
And that's what happened with Pasquazi. So we had their desktop up, and they said, hey, you know, I think I want a mobile website, and this is what I want. And so I think we're going to see a lot more of that in the future.
Yeah. So a lot of people that are existing situations, you're going to get that. You're going to get them saying, well, you know, I've had colleagues and other businesses saying, are you on mobile? What does your site look like on mobile? They're going to start coming back to you if you built it, or they're going to try to contact you if you're in the business of doing this and saying, I need to get my site to be on mobile, having no clue what that means to them. You know, then you have to know that experience or bring somebody in that can help them strategize about their mobile experience, because now it's going towards not only being on mobile, but tying everything together with social media, mobile, this whole big thing about how does mobile tie in with everything. And it's really you're starting to see more of the social media aspects coming in. And like you saw on the Pasquazi site, they've got all their social media down at the bottom. It's right there in front of you. So if you want to find them on Facebook, right there it is. You know, it's right on the mobile phone. And a lot of people are doing that with the mobile sites as well, making sure that the tie-ins with social media are really there. So if you're getting into that and they really don't have any experience,
I guess I wonder if anybody's selling that as a service along with the site. You know, mobile, they're selling a mobile strategy as a deliverable or
Not exclusively mobile, but web
marketing
marketing strategies in
yeah.
general.
Well,
Mobile would be part of that.
one of the first questions we're asking when we're talking to a new client, do you care what this looks like on the mobile phone? You know, and our answer usually is you should, to a point. And depending on what you can afford to do with it, we can make it look really good or we can make it functional. You know, and that's the whole key is, do they need to do something on mobile? As long as the site delivers the content for the most part that most people want to find when you go to your site, like if you bury your phone number way down at the bottom of the page, it's not really a good place to put it. Because people, when they're coming on a mobile phone, you know, unless they've got time to look for it, what are they normally looking for? Address, phone number, how to contact you, and where you're at. For most people, it's more or less a phone book. When they're on the road, they're trying to find something. They're trying to get a hold of you. So if that's not what's coming up on your phone, more than likely, you're losing people off your phone.
Now, how about calls to action? Maybe Terry, you know something about this, you know, because ideally you want to, someone hits your website, you want to convert them from a browser to a customer. Is there any usage of that, you know, integrating a call to action into a mobile experience?
Oh, sure. I mean, that's done all the time. A lot of ad agencies, that's what they basically do, is that kind of stuff. So,
Yeah.
yes, absolutely. You can, you know, and a lot of apps and a lot of mobile websites build advertising. I mean, Google has a whole strategy for that, right, of building advertising into mobile sites. So yeah, I would strongly recommend putting an offer into a.
And would that be one of the primary buttons or one of the top four?
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I've seen that with a few other people. I mean, the Language Stars client wanted to be able to have a space on their mobile site where, in theory, they could offer a special just to the mobile phone.
That's part of why part of why Dennis talked a little bit at the beginning about the whole smartphone thing. The statistics on how people actually buy on a smartphone are staggering. You know, what Dennis was talking about, those Google slides, is really just the surface of what's going on. More than 50% of all smartphone users buy something from using their smartphone. So, you know, it's really relatively small. That 79% is overall usage, but 80% of those 79% actually buy things on their smartphone. I know I do. I buy stuff on my smartphone all the time.
especially things like, apps over, ebooks, yeah, all that kind of stuff.
Yep. So,
Another twist to all this is, and maybe this is a topic for another meeting, is how to handle multilingual sites.
oh,
And so, and what
Yeah.
really bothers me about where all this is going, your second example there, is you've got your data duplicated on 2 different sites, and now if you make that multilingual, you really got a mess.
it's exponential.
Yeah, and so now when you say, oh, would you make this update, this simple update,
Yeah.
all of a sudden it's not so simple.
Well, and even with mobile Joomla, even keeping it on one site, with the fact that some of the content is actually different, like the modules are going to be different and things like that, it still gets exponential. Even in a one regular site doing multilingual, you look at the fact that for the most part, every time you add another language, you're pretty much adding another set of modules, or another set of, potentially adding another set of modules or another set of content, depending on what you're trying to do. So yeah, you're right. And you multiply that by 3 sites, and now you're like, holy, I just got a lot of stuff to deal with.
I'd be really interested to hear how other people do multilingual. I guess what I've done is created 2 sites. I mean, in Spanish you go to a different site and you update 2
I've
sites.
seen some extensions, not sure what they were, but basically, you know how you see the WYSIWYG editor, the content pane? Well, right below it is content pane for language 1 and language 2. And so when you serve up the article, your site knows whether to
Yeah.
serve it up in English, Spanish. French.
There's,
But if you got all your graphics.
Yeah. if you've got to do the different graphics, if you've got text in the graphics, then yes, you do. Josetta is from Anything Digital. It works with the Joomla core multilingual in 2.5 and 3x. It's from Anything Digital. It's actually very good for doing multilingual. It does what he's talking about. You have a choice of switching between the languages right there in the editor.
You know, someone who really has that urge to learn something would be a great presenter.
Yeah, it would be.
I believe you, I'm no expert on this, because
Yeah.
like I said, what I decided to do was just create multiple sites for the languages.
Yeah, but you're still doing the same thing. You're just doing it in 2 different sites. If you have to change that one page, you got to change it in English and go to Spanish and go to Italian and change it on both 3 sites.
Just one comment I wanted to make. We're probably running pretty close to calling it quits.
What time is it?
Or 7:30. But on my website for the mobile, they actually shared the same articles on both sites. It's whether, so once it was set up, they knew, that this was the special, and it would just be displayed on both, this area on the desktop and this area on the mobile. So they had one piece of content that was on both sites.
Okay. Yeah, I know some of the mobile extensions I've seen will do it with multiple sets of content. So you have the menus pointing at different pieces of content, which you could do that anyway with your mobile menu. You could have it pointing at different, like we did with the language stars. They needed a different layout for different pieces of content because they wanted to highlight different things on the page. Wasn't going to be the same on the desktop. They were going to have more feature-rich stuff on the desktop. Mobile, we were cutting half of it out. So we chose to do it that way. We could have done it within the same site, but there were just too many risks. So we decided to do the multiple sites. But yeah, that's when you start getting into needing to do multilingual, that adds another whole dimension of planning and processing and methods that you have to have in place to make sure that when you update page in English, it gets updated in Spanish and all your other languages. So, and even when it starts getting into mobile, you got to make sure everything transitions into mobile too. I haven't seen anything yet doing multilingual on mobile, but it's probably out there. And it should be out there, and it should be working fine because it should be functional. The question is, how would you do it in Joomla? I haven't actually seen a presentation on that yet. But with Joomla itself, it is multilingual. It recognizes the languages, allows you to switch it. So in theory, it shouldn't be any real difference. If you've got a site working on Joomla, it works on the mobile, it should work exactly the same way.